The Hero Association dubbed the 9 jinns at the top of Jinn society as 9 evils. This nickname should be interpreted as 9 sources of evil, a number of destruction, but the 9 evils took the nickname as a compliment and accepted it. The third evil, Defiance, formed a hidden safe haven by utilizing a cave deep in the mountains of South Hamgyong, at Defiance's sanctuary, while looking at Tomer. The jinn who worked there then confusedly wondered, what was wrong with her, why was she suddenly in the office? She usually did not show interest in missions. Tomer's appearance was now slightly different with a brownish skin color. Tomer just ignored the whispers of those who talked about her. They felt she was very strange. Was she really a jinn? But they soon became panicked and refocused on their work when a male officer entered the room. The male officer then approached and called Tomer. While feeling annoyed, Tomer then kicked the desk in front of her, not caring about that. The male officer then gave a document to her. He said that he knew her skill was great, but he couldn't let her complain because she felt the mission was too easy. While sighing, Tomer said that she understood, so she then asked, what was the mission this time? The male officer told her to see for herself. Hearing that, Tomer said it would be better if he explained it to her. She then read the document he had given her earlier, but as she continued to read the document, she was then surprised. A guess then came to her mind. The male officer confirmed it. This is a reconnaissance mission. In the cube, Hajin was seen sitting casually there. He seemed to be waiting for someone. Shortly after that, the person he was waiting for then came and called him. In a polite tone, the person then asked, you made an appointment for magic aspect engraving, right? Hajin confirmed it. He smiled at that. He then greeted him and introduced himself. He was a 4-star mage, Jin. Hearing that, while smiling politely at him, Hajin then said, you are the one in charge of the aspect today, right? I'll be counting on you. 4-star mage who focuses on artifacts. It is the highest rank that can be encountered by ordinary people. Hajin felt he was very lucky. As Jin continued to stare at him, Hajin then felt Jin's gaze like judging him. He wondered. He just judged my clothes today, right? With a very different bitchy face from before. While directing him, Jin then asked him to pass this way. Seeing that, Hajin could only lament. Mage was indeed a very materialistic person. Actually he dressed neatly because he knew they were like that. Maybe he should have dressed up even more. When he arrived at his office, Jin then asked what magic aspect he wanted to carve. Hajin said that he was looking for physical strengthening or magic defense. While pouring a cup of tea, Jin then said that he understood. He then snapped his fingers, and many floating screens then appeared behind him. While sipping his tea, Jin said that this should meet his criteria. He asked, is there anything he likes? Seeing that, Hajin then pondered for a moment. People usually carve magic aspects that require little mana usage on their artifacts, because, even if someone has a lot of mana, there is a limit to how much they can use, but Athenian's black stone bracelet has no such limit. So what Hajin needs is a magic aspect with a lot of mana usage so that he can only use it once a week, which also has a great function, but he felt annoyed when he saw Jin's casual attitude. What's up with his attitude towards me? He blatantly underestimated him. He didn't expect him to judge him just from his clothes. Hajin wondered, what should he do? He knew, if he let this continue, maybe he would carve the magic aspect half-heartedly. Hajin then coughed to get his attention. He said that he didn't want something trivial like that. He asked, didn't he have another magic aspect that required a lot of mana usage to activate? He said that he was looking for something like enhanced protection energy or instant awakening. Hearing that, Jin said that it was possible, but, not giving him a chance to finish his sentence, with a provocative tone, Hajin then asked, was it a little difficult for a 4-star mage? Jin could only be silent. Hearing that, he didn't expect him to ask that. Seeing his silence, Hajin continued, if so, it's okay. He came here because he was in a rush. Maybe they will meet again. Seeing him who was about to walk away, Jin then immediately stopped him. That's not what he meant. Hajin then pretended to be confused. Jin was really confused by his attitude. He wondered, was he rich? Jin said, it seems they just didn't give him enough information. Of course, magic aspects like that can be, but, he was just worried if the price was too expensive. Hajin then pretended to be surprised to hear that. Jin then said that what they showed earlier was for ordinary customers. He then asked, if he had a limit on the cost that could be spent. Hearing that, Hajin then approached him and whispered to him. Jin gaped at that. He did not expect Hajin's money to be that much, with an attitude that was 180 degrees different from before. Jean then enthusiastically said that he would show him another list, because he was in a rush, he would only show the best. He also told the waiter to bring them the best quality tea. Hajin snorted at the change in his attitude. The next day, this was the day when school was back in session, the cadets came to their respective classes and gathered with their friends. There was also Hajin. He hummed a song while smiling slightly. His mood seemed to be good at the moment. They completed the Gam Mountain Dungeon and Kim Suho got the Mistiltine safely. He also completed his magic aspect engraving request. He silently thanked Kim Suho and the shares he invested. He really didn't want to show off like that. But he had no other choice because the person he was dealing with was a materialistic person. He was happy because so far everything went smoothly. After Kim Suhyuk arrived in class, he then asked for their attention. He explained, starting today, they would form a group of 5 and start working as a team. Hearing that, Hajin knew what he meant. Team play, in other words, working as a group, mini tower raid, small battles, and team bonding activities such as going out together. Kim Suhyuk then told them to form a team with the people they wanted, and submit their member list next Wednesday to him. Hearing that, Hajin wondered, what could the isolated people like him do? Kim Suhyuk added, if next Wednesday they were not in the team, he would choose a team for them. Hajin felt helpless hearing that. He didn't really like that option, but his attention was soon distracted, when he heard someone tapping on the table behind him. It was Rachel. Looking at Rachel who sat alone with a confused look on her face, Hajin wondered if Rachel was in a similar situation to him. The difference between them was probably because she always chose to work alone. He guessed it was also because she was a princess. Hajin felt that it sounded good if they formed a team. There was something that he also had to give her. It was of course sapling powder, based on the original story. By now she should have gotten a clue about her enlightenment. If this was delayed any longer, then the difference between her stat now and the one in the original storyline would be too big. Then, Hajin then wrote a message to Rachel containing a request to form a team with her. After he sent the message, he then waited for her reaction. While Rachel was deep in thought, she was then surprised by the sound of a message notification from her smartwatch. Seeing Rachel who opened her smartwatch, Hajin knew that she would check the message, but someone unexpected suddenly approached her at this time. Hajin was surprised when he saw that person. That person was Tomer. Tomer then invited Rachel to form a team with her. Hajin was confused why Tomer approached Rachel. The cadets who were watching were also surprised when they saw it. Hajin was confused. Why Tomer was moving now, and why did she invite Rachel? If wickedness, a mercenary in the Jin world, made a move, there must be someone behind it. The fact that that person was targeting Rachel, there was only one person he remembered, it was Lancaster. Rachel then told Tomer that there was still time left, so she wanted to think about it first. Tomer was silent for a moment hearing that, while smiling slightly. She then said, as you wish. Tomer did not force her and walked away from there. After that, Rachel then remembered that she had just gotten a message. After Rachel opened the message, she was then surprised to find out that the message came from Hajin. When Rachel looked at him, she then saw Hajin who was also looking at her as if waiting for her reaction. It made Rachel shy and misbehaved. She then immediately turned her face away from him. Hajin was then surprised to see that. He wondered, would she refuse his invitation? But, he then got a reply message from Rachel. Rachel said she would think about it first. Hajin smiled slightly reading that. He felt that he just needed to wait then. While Rachel herself felt very happy at the moment, her heart felt very sweet as if smeared with honey, and for Chai Nayun, she seemed to be confused. She was facing a dilemma at the moment. This was because she hadn't thought about who she would team up with outside the top 100. Nayun was really dizzy at the moment. It was true that their team would get extra points if they included lower-ranked cadets, but what confused her was, where should she find capable people in the lower ranks? While glancing at a direction, Nayun thought, there is only one person like that. That is of course Hajin, but he has now gotten many invitations to form a team from their classmates. He is really up for grabs like a hot item right now. Seeing that, Nayun can only lament that he is indeed popular, although that only applies when looking for a group. Considering that theory class is one of the criteria for forming a team, people like him who have good grades in theory are the best candidates. Nayun feels that it shouldn't be too difficult for her to recruit Hajin if she wants. If there is one thing that bothers her, what if he thinks she likes him? Nayun will feel very embarrassed if that happens, even though she only wanted to make a team with him. But her attention was then immediately distracted when someone behind her suddenly asked her, was she done thinking? It was Shin Jong-hak. Na-yeon told him to mind his own business. Hearing that, Jong-hak then said to her, whoever she chose would not make any changes, so why did she bother deciding? Just pick anyone, like him, and encourage them to put on their best performance. Hearing that, Na-yeon then stuck her tongue out at him. She decided to ignore him anymore. She said that she already had a plan. Hearing that, Jong-hak then took her notebook to see the plan. Na-yeon was then surprised to see that. She then frantically headed towards him, and tried to take her notebook back, but it was useless, because Jong-hak had already read out the names of the people she had planned to recruit, but as Jong-hak continued to read the names, he was then shocked, because Na-yeon was also planning to recruit Hajin. Na-yeon could only remain petrified when Jong-hak shouted so loudly as to announce it to the whole class. The attention of the whole class then immediately focused on them. They wondered, what was that just now? It seemed that someone was also eyeing Hajin. They then realized that it was Na-yeon. Na-yeon really felt very embarrassed at this time. Her face turned red as their gazes all fell on her. Jong-hak then asked her, what was the meaning of this? Why did she choose Kim Hajin? With shaking hands, Na-yeon told him to shut up. She then irritably hit him in the stomach. Na-yeon's attack was so sudden that it made Jong-hak unable to react. He then could only lie on his desk. Na-yeon irritably asked, why are you looking at the contents of other people's notes without permission? Seeing Jong-hak lying motionless on his desk, the cadets then wondered, was he dead? Not caring about that, Na-yeon then irritably walked back to her desk. She then glanced at Hajin briefly, but she then immediately turned her face back. Hajin could only feel confused seeing that. After a while, Kim Soo-hyuk then announced the end of the lesson for today, and the cadets then flocked out of the classroom, and when Hajin was about to leave the classroom too, Na-yeon then called him. Seeing Hajin who did not hear her call, Na-yeon then immediately approached him and pulled his hand. Hajin was then confused by that. He then confusedly asked, what's going on? Na-yeon nervously said, I think you heard it earlier. She then asked, would you like to form a team? But, before Na-yeon could even finish her sentence, Rachel suddenly interrupted her, and told Hajin that she had submitted the list. Na-yeon was then confused about what she meant. Rachel explained, Hajin had formed a team with me. Na-yeon was then stunned to hear that. She then immediately turned to Hajin with a look of disbelief. Rachel said, as she thought, Na-yeon could only feel shocked to hear that. She really did not know what to say at the moment, with an attitude as if she did not care. Na-yeon then asked, is that so? She said that she was just worried that no one would want to form a team with him. She was just trying to pay attention to him because they were in the same club. While patting his shoulder, Na-yeon said that she felt that her worries were in vain. Then good luck. After saying that, Na-yeon then left there. Rachel stared at her departure with a confused look, while clenching her hands tightly. Na-yeon then thought, Rachel, she uses a sword just like her, and their physiques are also similar, plus, their grades are similar, except in the theory class. But still, Na-yeon felt very disappointed at this time. She was disappointed why Hajin chose Rachel instead of her. During break time, Hajin was seen walking with Rachel. Rachel suddenly called him. Hajin then immediately turned to her. Rachel asked, you're not going to join another team, right? Hearing that, Hajin felt she was asking that because of Na-yeon. He then replied, of course not, but, someone suddenly called him at this time. It was Ho-sung. Ho-sung thanked him for letting him join. He said that he honestly wanted to make a team with him too. He was very grateful at this time. While rubbing the back of his head, Hajin said that it didn't matter. He thought, he was just following Rachel. Then, to strengthen their relationship as a team, he then suggested, how about we eat together? He then introduced the man who was with him. He is Lee Bakyu. He is our team member too. Bakyu then greeted him. Hajin was a little worried at first because Tomer started acting. But maybe this will go well, because he is here too. After hearing Ho-sung's suggestion, Hajin then looked at Rachel doubtfully. Rachel said that it was a good idea. Ho-sung was happy to hear that. He then asked her if there was anything she wanted to eat. Rachel said whatever. She wasn't picky. Hearing her answer, Hajin then thought, even though Rachel wasn't picky about food, if there was something that she liked, that was it. Hajin then suggested, how about a Korean restaurant? Han-kyu-jong. The anticipation could be seen in Rachel's eyes when she heard that. She then immediately agreed to that. Hajin chuckled at that. Ho-sung also felt that it was a good place. When night fell, when Na-yeon was in her dorm room, She was now seen talking to someone through her smartwatch. She then said, "Then, our team consists of 2 warriors, 1 shooter, 1 supporter, and 1 mage." The person she was talking to was Hazuki. Hearing that, Hazuki then said to her, since she was a warrior and shooter, their team might have a great combination. Nayeon felt proud of herself hearing that, but, Hazuki then asked, did Hajin not join their team? Nayeon was then surprised by her sudden question. She then reasoned, if she wanted it, she could pull him in, but if she did that, she felt sorry for his team. Besides Rachel, the abilities of the other team members were mediocre. Hazuki was a little sorry to hear that, even though it would be easier if Hajin joined. Nayeon then told her to stop talking about it. She would compile a list of their team members. Hazuki understood. She then thanked her. After she ended the call, Nayeon then lay down on the bed. Even though she tried to close her eyes, but she couldn't fall asleep. She felt regretful at the moment. If she knew this would happen, she would have invited Hajin from the beginning. That way, she wouldn't feel anxious in the theory part. She gave it up with Rachel because she hesitated for no apparent reason. She still clearly remembers her defeat in the midterm exam that time. And it happened again after she started using swords in the team. This really makes her very frustrated. If this continues, she is worried. Won't she lose again? Somewhere with a very cold temperature that freezes the entire room, Hajin's team was seen gathering there. This was the first lesson as a team, dungeon exploration. Generally, when a new dungeon was discovered, the experienced party would go first to explore the dungeon, and their goal today was to replace that party's job. While shivering from the cold, Bakyu said that they had been walking for 20 minutes. Seeing Hajin, who still looked very relaxed, Hozung then asked if he wasn't cold. Hajin replied no, and as they continued to walk forward, Rachel then saw something ahead. They were faced with 5 paths that each led to a different direction. They then asked, which one should we choose? Tomer said there was no point in thinking about it. She then advised them to go in the direction she was pointing, but Hajin immediately replied no. He advised not to go there. Tomer was then confused by his answer. She then asked, why are you so sure? Hearing that, Hajin thought, why not? Her motive was clear. She felt that Tomer must have prepared a trap for them there. But he certainly would not say that openly to her. He then said that he had good eyesight. It was not the right path. Tomer was silent for a moment hearing that. She then asked Rachel, who was the team leader, to make a decision. Rachel felt a little hesitant at the moment. She then said that she would follow Hajin's words. Hajin smiled slightly at that. As they continued to walk deeper, they then saw a large monster with dense fur all over its body. The monster seemed to be fast asleep at the moment. The monster was Snowman. Seeing that, Hozung then said, it seems that the path chosen by Hajin was right. Tomer looked sullen at the moment. After that, Hajin continued his efforts in obstructing Tomer's plan. She continued to reject Tomer's advice in choosing the path they would go, because he knew there were many traps that had been installed that awaited them in there. Although her efforts in keeping Rachel away from the team were admirable, but he could not let her plan go smoothly. As Tomer resentfully stared at him, Hozung then admiringly asked him how he was so good at finding the right path. Hearing that, Hajin simply said that he was just lucky. Tomer then clenched her fists tightly. She was really annoyed at the moment. Is it that hard to get one person hurt so that they can retreat? This is all Kim Hajin's fault. The other team members now really believe Hajin's vision, because it has come to this point. Tomer then called Rachel, and asked her to come with her. Rachel was then confused by it. She then confusedly asked, what does she mean? Tomer explained, the search would be more efficient if they moved in 2 groups. She felt it was not good to rely on just one person, but Rachel was hesitant to hear that. Hajin then immediately said that they could not waste time. While holding Rachel's hand, he then invited Rachel to continue walking. Seeing that, Tomer then annoyedly called Hajin, and asked, why are you so confident? As for the reason why Hajin was so confident in choosing the path, it was because he had 1,000 miles eyes. With this ability, he could see the entire dungeon without being blocked. After determining the correct path, he then said, the path is over here, and they believed him, and followed him through there. As they continued to walk deeper, they then saw Kim Suhyuk, who was already standing there. Rachel then nervously called him. Hajin then confusedly turned to her. Rachel said, your hand. Hearing that, Hajin then finally remembered that he had been holding her hand. He then immediately let go and apologized to her. Rachel said it was okay. While blushing, Rachel said that he didn't need to apologize like that. Seeing them coming, Kim Soo-hyuk then shouted and told them to give their report. Hearing that, they then immediately stood up straight and reported, Snowman, Snow Tree, Snow Golem, and White Drake. Judging from the level of monsters found in the dungeon, at least the level of the dungeon boss here is intermediate. 3. Kim Soo-hyuk smiled hearing that. He then praised them and said that it was perfect. They were happy to hear that. The four of them then happily gathered together. They still couldn't believe that they got the perfect result. This was really amazing. They wondered, we just need to rely on Hajin from now on, right? While Tomer herself didn't join their euphoria and looked aloof at the back, with a hateful look, Tomer then chuckled while staring at them. At that time, in Defiance's sanctuary. Right when Tomer received this mission, she was initially quite confused because she was given a reconnaissance task. The male officer explained, the purpose of this mission was to injure and weaken a cube cadet, Rachel. Those who had infiltrated the cube executives promised to help them, so this was not a difficult task. When she had succeeded in making Rachel unable to carry out her daily routine, their other agents would handle the rest. He then asked, I can count on you, right? Hearing that, Tomer then closed the mission document. With a confident tone, she said that this was an easy job, because they were just kids. But after her plan was repeatedly thwarted, Tomer could only regret her words. This was not easy at all. She then received a message from the agent asking about the mission, why the mission was postponed. Was there an unexpected situation? Tomer was really upset to read that, even though it hadn't been long since this mission started. Why were they urging her? She could only sigh in frustration at this time. She admitted that unexpected situations had indeed occurred. He always appeared to block her when she tried to do something. He stuck like chewing gum to Rachel. It was as if he was preventing her from approaching Rachel. He was always with her, whether it was when she was in class or after class ended. She was annoyed. How dare rank 334 seem to act so haughty? After she read the document containing details about him, she didn't find anything remarkable about him. She then jokingly thought, don't tell me he believed such nonsense. Who has the courage will get a beautiful woman. But a conjecture suddenly appeared in Tomer's head when she thought about it. She guessed, could it be that Kim Hajin likes Rachel? When it came to that conjecture, Tomer then thought of a plan. Then, she just has to exaggerate and spread the rumor that Hajin likes Rachel. They will definitely keep their distance then. That way, she could complete the mission easily. To make that happen, she had to get close to the whole group. In the theory class, phenomenon analysis 2, after explaining at length to all of them, the teacher then ended his explanation for today. He said, next week, each group will choose a small dungeon to represent the best raid strategy you can do. They could only feel frustrated hearing that. After saying that, the teacher then ended his class for today. Hosung sighed in frustration after hearing the task, but after remembering that the two smartest people in the class were in his group, he then didn't feel worried at all. He then told Hajin that he was counting on him. Hajin humbly said that he wasn't very good. Hearing that, Hosung asked him not to be too modest. Yonghan then called them all and said, there will be a team leader meeting at 7 p.m., Wednesday next Sunday. All team leaders must be present. Make sure to gather in the hall. After that, the cadets then cleaned up and left the classroom. Hajin then invited Rachel to go to the cafe to discuss about their respective roles before leaving. Rachel agreed. Hearing that, Tomer then interrupted them and suggested, since we are going to the cafe, let's all eat cake to get to know each other. Hajin was then confused to hear her suddenly suggest that. He then asked, what did she want to do? Tomer said, what else? She said that she just wanted to deepen their relationship as a team. Hajin felt strange to hear that. Why did she suddenly become proactive? After they all agreed, Tomer then invited them to leave immediately. They were running out of time. Hajin was surprised to see that, when she gathered everyone, her actions were really suspicious in Hajin's eyes. After arriving at a cafe called Cafe Carrot, Hajin had checked the roof and underground but he did not find any traps, but still he felt something was strange. Seeing Hajin who seemed unfocused, Rachel then confusedly called him. Hajin then immediately refocused after hearing that. He then explained, Hosung and Bakyu will look for information about the dungeon. Tomer and Rachel, you will calculate the density. They understood. Hajin continued. Then, once the research information was submitted to him, he would unite and make a presentation. They understood. After Hajin finished explaining their respective assignment, Tomer then said, now that the assignment discussion was finally over, Hosung felt she was so easygoing. Bakyu was thankful that they had Hajin. He was originally very worried because it was a group assignment. Tomer agreed with him. Bakyu then said to him, getting a good grade seems like it must be nice. He also got a lot of attention in battle after changing to a shooter, right? Hajin just said that it wasn't something great. Things are just normal for him. Hearing that, he told him not to be humble like that. He must have been approached by a famous guild, right? The figure of the boss suddenly appeared in his mind when he heard that. He then said yes. Rachel then suddenly pulled the hem of his shirt and whispered, calling him. Hajin then confusedly turned to her. Rachel whispered, asking, did the United Kingdom royal family approach him? Hearing that, Hajin confusedly asked, what did she mean? Rachel said, from the United Kingdom royal family guild. Hearing that, Hajin didn't remember them contact him, but he then remembered something. He then opened the email. He said that he did receive an email from them. He didn't realize it because he didn't check his email every day. Hearing that, Rachel was annoyed. Why would they contact someone via email? Hajin then said he would check it now. He was quite surprised that the Royal Family Guild wanted to recruit him. They wrote the email in Korean. He then read the email carefully. The annual salary is 100 million and the commission is given separately. This is not a very attractive offer considering they are trying to recruit him. Rachel asked if she could see it too. Hajin let her. And when Rachel read the email, she was shocked. Why did they do their work like this? And when their attention was all on her, Rachel then sighed in frustration. She asked Hajin to forget it and not read it. She then stood up from her chair and said she would leave first. Tomer was then surprised to see that. She then sadly asked, how can you go first? You have to talk and laugh with Kim. Hajin. Tomer really felt depressed because her plan failed again. Hajin was confused to see Rachel who suddenly left. Hosung confusedly asked, what made her angry? Tomer could only sigh in frustration. Nothing was going according to her plan. Hajin wondered, did something happen? Is she okay? Did I make a mistake? Seeing that, Tomer then realized something. This situation, maybe. Tomer then called Bakyu. Bakyu confusedly turned to her. Tomer asked him, doesn't it feel like Hajin likes Rachel? In the gym auditorium, after finishing his daily training, Hajin then bought a drink at the vending machine. Resting after stamina training feels like heaven. This is not an easy thing. Even though he has arranged the training portion, he sighed helplessly. Because he didn't even have the strength to open the lid of the can at this time, but someone suddenly helped him open the can. Hajin was then surprised to see that. The person then called him, and when Hajin turned towards the person turned out to be Chai Nayun. Nayun asked him to talk for a while. Nayun was a little embarrassed to say that. Hajin then confusedly asked, what's wrong? Nayun hesitated for a moment. She then said, her team's presentation was about the Mantis Dungeon Hongchen. She just wanted to ask if he knew anything about it. Hearing that, with a look like looking at a fool, Hajin then asked her, how come you even chose the hardest dungeon of all? Nayun said that she had to. That annoying mage from their group insisted that they had to choose it. He convinced them and said that they could rely on him. Nayun could only agree at that moment. Hearing that, Hajin then thought, the mage from Chai Nayun's team, was he Oh Junsik? If I'm not mistaken, his skills were decent, but he was always very arrogant and rude. Because his family was quite rich, he didn't feel inferior even in front of Chai Nayun. Hajin then thought that he would only tell her the necessary information then. He then said that he thought they would get bonus points because the dungeon was much more difficult. He asked, did he do the presentation too? Nayun replied yes, because he insisted. Why do you ask? Hearing that, with a face like a shaman, Hajin then told her to leave the presentation to the other members. The look on his face showed that he was someone who liked to be tough, but he might freeze up during the presentation. If she let someone like him excel, then Cube and the entire public would collapse and their results would be a total mess. Nayun seemed to have an epiphany after hearing that. She then said that she also thought so. She was going to just let it go, but Nayun then told him all her complaints all this time. Nayun angrily said that she had never seen anyone who did whatever they wanted even more than her. Hearing that, Hajin then mocked her, so you realize that you like to do whatever you want, he suggested. What if Hazuki did the presentation? She seemed to be able to do it smoothly. Nayun said that she wanted to do it too, but she was not sure Oh Junsik would agree. Nayun was confused about what to do, but they both then realized something. Are we close enough to be able to chat like this? The atmosphere between the two of them suddenly turned awkward as they both thought about it. Nayun then said, instead of that, she asked him to be careful during practice and said goodbye to him. Hajin understood. He said that he would finish his load set, and their dizzying class finally began. representatives from each team then came forward one by one to make presentations, and now it was the turn of Chai Nyan's team represented by Oh Junsik to come forward, but he seemed unable to make the presentation smoothly. He looked very nervous and stuttered when presenting their inventions. The cadets who saw it were wondering, "What's he doing?" Hajin also thought that it was really a pathetic presentation, while glancing at Nyan who was now burning with anger. Hajin thought. In the end they couldn't change the presenter. After finally finishing his presentation, while rubbing the back of his head, Oh Junsik then apologized. He was too nervous earlier. Nyan and the other team members could only be silent hearing that. Nyan then angrily thought. Seriously, he said that while laughing, realizing her bad mood. Hazuki then calmed her down and asked her to forget it, but Nyan certainly wouldn't just calm down. While clenching her hands tightly, she angrily thought that she would come to him later after class, but her attention was soon distracted when the teacher asked the next team to come forward. The team that came forward next turned out to be Hajin's team, but she then could only gape. She was very surprised to see Hajin wearing glasses. After arriving at the podium, Hajin then said he would start his presentation. He explained, their team was responsible for the Wazan dungeon. It was a real dungeon located at the foot of the Sirak Mountains. Hajin then clearly described their findings related to the dungeon. Nayun could only be surprised to see that. She was amazed to see Hajin could be so smooth in his presentation. Nervousness did not show in his tone at all. It flowed naturally. The teacher then interrupted his explanation for a moment. He said that he had a question. How can he estimate the opposing mana current with only that little amount of information? Hajin smiled at that. He then answered, it can be explained by this formula. The cadets were then equally amazed at his presentation. They were amazed to see him so fluent in his presentation. They knew he was smart, but they did not expect that he was also good at presenting. It was very unexpected. They also felt that he looked a bit cool too. Nayun also blushed when she saw him at this time. She seemed to be fascinated by him. After a while, Hajin then ended his presentation. After returning to his team, he then high-fived with Rachel. Rachel praised his good work. Nayun was silent for a moment seeing that. Seeing Rachel talking so close to Hajin, she could only frown. In the gym auditorium, Rachel had just finished her daily training there. With this, today's schedule was all finished. The presentation ended well, and tomorrow was the weekend. Besides that, she had also given Hajin the contract. They were going home together after finishing their classes. They chatted casually talking about the things that had been happening recently. The other members suggested to have a party. Hajin then asked, would she not attend the celebration party? Rachel replied no, she had some training schedules. Hearing that, Hajin then said he would go first then. Rachel understood. She then said goodbye to him. But, she then remembered something. She then immediately took something out of her bag. Hajin could only feel confused at that, while handing some kind of document to him. Rachel asked him to take it. Hajin was confused by that. While taking the document, he then asked, what is this? Rachel replied, the Royal Family Guild's preliminary contract. Hajin was then surprised to hear that. Rachel said that this one has much better terms than what he got before. In fact, she was the one who asked them to approach him, but it seems that they misunderstood a bit after seeing his rank. Hajin didn't know what to say to that. Amidst the breeze and the sunlight of afternoon, Rachel then said to him, so, I want you to carefully consider our proposal once again. After recalling that, Rachel felt happy. She felt that she had done well. While humming a song, Rachel then headed to the changing room. She would immediately change clothes, return to the dormitory, and sleep, but, just as she was about to enter the changing room, she suddenly heard the gossip of some people inside. They were gossiping about the rumors about her that have been circulating lately, rumors that Kim Hajin likes he. They sounded incredulous when they heard that. They wondered, is it really okay for him to do that? The person who told the story said yes. She heard that he had even confessed his love to Rachel. Rachel was stunned to hear that. Her face then turned red from blushing when she heard that Hajin liked her. Rachel really couldn't believe what she just heard. She didn't expect Hajin to like her, but more importantly, where did they find out? They said that Hajin did look a little suspicious. Lately she kept following Rachel. Rachel then felt annoyed to hear them talking bad about Hajin. She resentfully thought, it's because they're on the same team. How dare they spread such nonsense? Since they're a team, of course he should be around her. But, as she recalled Hajin always protecting her, and his statement saying that he's her fan, Rachel suddenly felt doubtful. They kept gossiping. They felt doubtful. Even so, isn't their status so different? Rachel was silent for a moment hearing that, and as Rachel walked backwards, she suddenly bumped into someone, and when she looked back, the person then complained to her. That person turned out to be Nayun. She was now with Yona. Nayun then asked, "What are you doing?" Rachel anxiously said, "It's nothing." Nayun could only feel confused. Hearing that, she then irritably told her to lift her foot that stepped on her. Rachel finally realized it. She then immediately lifted it and apologized to her. Looking at Nayun who was about to enter the dressing room, Rachel then realized something. If she entered the dressing room now, then, after the two of them finally entered the dressing room, the gossipers then told the rumors that had been circulating lately to them. Rachel immediately panicked hearing that. She was confused about what she should do. If the ridiculous rumors continued to circulate, she was scared. And just as the gossipers were about to tell something about Hajin to the two of them, Rachel suddenly walked in at this moment. Their attention was immediately distracted and shockedly turned towards her, seeing her. The gossipers then frantically wondered, did she hear us? They were feeling anxious at this moment. They then immediately said they would leave first. Nayun was then surprised and confused to hear that. She told them to finish their talk first. She asked, what was wrong with Hajin? But, they seemed not to listen and just ran away from there. Nayun could only feel confused seeing that, while Rachel herself sighed in relief seeing that. She was grateful for having succeeded in preventing the rumors from continuing to circulate. Yona seemed to realize something after seeing her behavior. While Nayun herself was dead curious at the moment, she was very annoyed that they did not finish their talk. Yona suddenly asked Rachel at this time, come to think of it, you are on the same team as that person, right? Rachel was then confused about what she meant by that person. Nayun said, Hajin. While pointing towards Yona, Nayun said, for some reason, she couldn't say his name. Yona then felt embarrassed to hear that. She then immediately said, who said, I can do it. She told her not to talk nonsense. Yona then asked her, how does it feel? Rachel was then confused by that. She didn't know what she meant. Yona chuckled at that. She then asked her, are you acting as if you don't know? The Royal Family Guild has contacted him, right? Rachel was then surprised to hear that. Yona said that everyone already knows it. Who would have thought that a valuable Prilum contract would be used on a 334th rank cadet? It doesn't make sense unless the Royal Family Guild has gone crazy. She could understand if it was the work of someone who saw what he was hiding. The environment suddenly fell silent for a moment after Yona said that. Nayun was really confused at the moment. She then asked, what are you talking about? While shaking her head, Rachel said that she didn't understand what she meant. Even so, they had the right to contact him based on the agreement. Hearing that, Yona then laughed. She said that she was just joking. She advised her not to use that right arbitrarily. It's not good to make enemies out of the people around you, right? Rachel clenched her fists tightly hearing that. She knew that Yona was giving her a warning. She probably wanted to tell her that she was the one who wanted Hajin, and told her not to cross the line. She really didn't need to keep Hajin if he rejected them. Seeing her silence, Yona felt that she might back down with this warning. She then told her, it was fate that they were in this situation. She then invited her to eat in her room before she went home. Rachel accepted her invitation. Yona gasped at that. Rachel didn't know why, but she didn't want to lose to her now. After the three of them sat together, the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. No one said anything to start the current conversation. Nayun, who was stuck between the two of them, could only feel confused at the moment. She didn't understand why the situation between them was tense. They were talking about things that only they understood. While looking towards Rachel, Yona then thought, she offered it just as a formality. She didn't expect her to accept it. She was confused. What was she thinking? After hesitating for a moment, she then asked if she wanted to drink juice, but Rachel replied no, and the atmosphere turned silent again. After that, Yona could only feel annoyed at her answer. She then stood up from her chair, and went to the table next to her. While pouring the juice on the table into a glass, Yona then asked her, how did you come to know about him? Rachel was confused about what to say at this time. There was no way she could tell her the truth. She then just said that she only knew him naturally, but Yona certainly wouldn't believe that. Yona continued, if so, do you also know why he hid his true self? Rachel gasped to hear that. She could only remain silent. She didn't know what to say at the moment. Seeing that, Yona then smiled and said, I guess you don't know her. It is indeed information that is hard to find. Nayun was really confused as she listened to their conversation. She didn't understand what he was hiding. Rachel didn't evade. She really didn't know anything about Hajin's past. and also the reason why he hid his power. However, she then said, nothing would change even if she didn't know that information. Hearing that, while shrugging her shoulders, Yona then said, why wouldn't anything change? Many things would change. Essence of the Strait is much stronger regarding information gathering than most guilds in this country. But, before Yona finished her words, Rachel suddenly interrupted her. She said that wasn't what she meant. She believed she would be favored if she waited for him to tell her by himself. At least it was better than investigating and finding the information by yourself. Her words seemed to have successfully triggered Yona. She then could only remain silent. Rachel said that it was getting late. She would leave now. As she walked past her, she thanked her for inviting her to dinner. Yona could only be silent watching her exit the room. The environment suddenly turned silent at this time. Feeling annoyed, Nayun then asked her, why were the two of them talking about things that she didn't understand at all? She told her to speak in Korean. Nayun's words really didn't make sense, because the two of them had been speaking in Korean. At the Carrot Cafe, Tomer was hanging out with her two friends at the moment. Her friend then enthusiastically gossiped something to her. Did you know, Hajin likes Rachel? Tomer then pretended to be surprised to hear that. Her friend continued, she thinks she hasn't heard the rumor because she came from outside, but recently Cube has been buzzing because of the rumors. Tomer said that she didn't know that. She was of course lying, because she was the one who had spread the rumors. Her friend, who was a little quiet, then said, lately they have been together a lot. But isn't that because they are on the same team? Tomer gasped hearing that. Her friend continued, and, once Rachel graduates from Cube, she will become the captain of the Royal Guild. It could be that she was just adding to the relationship from the beginning. Hearing that, her friend said that it sounded reasonable. Hajin's rank increased to 334 recently. So he deserves to be in the Royal Family Guild, which is ranked 60th in the world. Tomer was then anxious to hear that. She was confused. It shouldn't be like this. Her plan was to familiarize herself with some Cube cadets, then lead them to spread the rumor. That way, Rachel would distance herself from Hajin because of the rumor, but she was feeling anxious at this time. Don't let the rumors disappear. When the two of them had started to think positively, Tomer then quickly said, but isn't the saying that there's no smoke if there's no fire? But they already didn't feel interested at the moment. Seeing that, Tomer anxiously thought that she had to make them interested again with the rumors. She then said, before she saw Hajin looking at Rachel, his eyes looked very soulful. Tomer posed so exaggeratedly when saying that to them. She herself even felt that this was a little excessive, but it unexpectedly made them feel interested. Tomer did not expect them to believe her nonsense so easily. It was because they were at an age where they were very interested in other people's relationships. Her friend then enthusiastically said that she had expected it. She asked, was there anything else? Tomer then thought hard about what other stories she could bring to them. She then said, when she and her team went to the cafe earlier, but what she didn't realize was, her smartwatch was secretly active at this time. Her smartwatch was being hacked at this time. The hacker then logged into her messenger and read one of the messages sent to her. Tomer, next Wednesday in class, take the item, it will help you in your mission. He felt interested to read that. The hacker turned out to be Hajin. He had guessed that Tomer came to Cube for another reason. Last night, he met Tomer at the convenience store. Tomer greeted him when they happened to cross paths. As the two of them chatted, Hajin thought, it feels like he is meeting her more and more often these days. But then he was surprised when he saw the watch Tomer was wearing. He felt something strange about the watch. After he hacked it, Hajin then realized, the watch was indeed fake. It looked like the real thing, but it couldn't deceive his eyes. As Hajin scrolled through her messenger, she then saw the details of the mission carried out by Tomer. Reading that, Hajin thought, it seems that Tomer was indeed targeting Rachel, even though he had to use ADSP so that she wouldn't realize that she was being hacked. But he got good information. Tomer wouldn't think that she had leaked the information. Hajin then felt happy when Tomer got a new message. Wednesday's class is Mock Relic War. There is a management center on the lowest floor in the underground area of B3. The item has been placed there, at 11 p.m., the management center. Reading that, Hajin pondered for a moment. There is not much time left. He must move quickly, but he was then surprised when he suddenly got a message at this time, and when he checked it, he was quite confused because it was a picture message. He wondered, who was it from? After he opened it, he wondered, was it from Rachel? She sent him a picture with a long text and asked, could he teach her how to do it? But after he read the sender's name, it wasn't her. She was struggling with the problem in front of her right now. her mind was really stuck and didn't know what to write to answer the problem. The person who could be so stupid was certainly Chai Nayan. She was really dizzy at the moment. She didn't understand what it meant at all. She had studied the notebook, but she couldn't solve a single one. This damn phenomenon 2 analysis kept talking about calculations, but she didn't understand it at all. She seemed to be in the library at the moment. Rachel was seen sitting not far from her. She was also studying the same as it seemed, looking at Rachel, who repeatedly checked her smartwatch. She seemed to be immersed in her thoughts at the moment. Nayan felt that this seemed to be difficult for her too. When thinking back about the dizzying problem, Nayan could only sigh in frustration. She also thought, this must be an easy problem for Hajin. Nayan then thought of something when she remembered about him. She then planned to ask Hajin for help in doing the problem. She repeatedly wrote the message that she would send to him, but she also repeatedly deleted it because either she felt the message was impolite or she felt like an idiot in the message, until finally she found the right sentence. Can you teach me how to do it? After Nayan sent the message to him, she then arrogantly thought, she almost finished it. She asked him just in case she was wrong, but after 20 minutes, she didn't get a reply from Hajin. Nayan irritably wondered, did he ignore her message? She felt annoyed at this moment. Did he think he was the only one she could ask for help? And just as Nayan was about to leave there, a message notification suddenly rang from her smartwatch. Nayan blushed at this moment. She knew who was sending her a message at this moment. While giggling, Nayan then put her bag back and sat back there. The reason why Hajin took 20 minutes to reply to her message was because it was quite time-consuming for him to write an answer that could make Nayan understand it. He realized how stupid she was. Hajin smiled slightly. She works hard in everything she does. She was also like this in the previous presentation. In the future, she will be a better hero than her own brother. But Hajin then remembered something important when he thought of Nayan's brother again. He forgot because he was used to life here, Chai Jin-yoon, even though he was in a coma due to being a demon seed, but he would then become a demon after the incubation period was over. There weren't many heroes strong enough to defeat him. No one knew how long it would take Chai Jin-yoon to wake up from his sleep, so, before that happened, Hajin clenched his hands tightly at the thought. But the problem was, only he knew the reason for Chai Jin-yoon's current condition. That meant he couldn't ask for any help. It was difficult for him to approach him alone, unless he was in disguise. But he then remembered something. He then took out the business card that the boss gave him at that time. At that time, after the boss saved him from the wrath of a jinn, she then approached him and invited him to join them. She also gave him some kind of invitation card. Hajin was quite surprised when he saw the invitation card. It was an invitation to join the Geronimo Mercenary. Geronimo Mercenary. It was one of the top-level mercenaries that existed today. However, it was actually just a disguise for the chameleon troop. He didn't know why they chose to recruit him instead of Shin Jonghak. I don't know how far the storyline would change with this. If he got help from them, it was possible for him to kill Chai Jin-yoon, without anyone realizing it. Hajin was silent for a moment when he came to that conclusion, but he then gasped when someone suddenly called him. It was Evangel. While rubbing her eyes, Evangel then asked, "You haven't slept yet?" Hajin apologized to her. He asked, "I made you wake up because the lights were still on." Evangel answered yes. Hajin then carried Evangel's small body and invited her to continue sleeping. Hajin thought that he had to slow down. If the incubation period of the seedlings was about 5 to 6 years, then he still had 1 year left from now. He was sure there was a way to solve this. Hajin then secretly glanced at the invitation card that the boss gave him. He then seemed to know where he was going next. The next day, Kim Soo-hyuk then gathered all the cadets in a room. He explained, "So, you all may already know it, but today's practical training will be mock relic war." The cadets looked very enthusiastic to hear that, while some of them were not happy, because they did not want their rank to drop because of this. Hajin himself looked normal to hear that. He thought, for relic, usually the country that found it will be the owner, but there are many countries destroyed by outcall in this world, so, in the current situation, the relic found in the empty land belongs to the finder. In order to get the relic, the guilds and even the jinn will fight each other. It is known as relic war. In other words, Hajin knows. This is a training for them to experience what a real relic war is like. Kim Soo-hyuk continued. The size of the relic excavation site is extremely large. The theme itself is melee. The command hierarchy, the method to contact other team members, and the location of the relic is unknown. They must choose a wise decision at every moment. During the training, the white team will be in charge of defense, and the black team will be in charge of attack. When the instructors judged that they had received severe injuries, or if they shouted "I surrender," then they would be disqualified. After explaining at length to them, Kim Soo-hyuk then snapped his fingers. Hajin was then shocked when a veil suddenly covered both eyes, not only him. The other cadets also experienced the same situation as him. They frantically wondered, "What is this?" They couldn't see anything at all. Seeing the panic of the cadets, Kim Soo-hyuk then told them to calm down. He explained, "It's my mana, so you don't need to panic. I blindfolded you so that we can place you into different locations randomly. We will move now." Hearing that, the cadets then walked behind him. The scene was very chaotic, because the cadets could not see at this time. It made them push each other and accidentally step on other people's feet. Hajin himself was in the middle of them. He then thought, he guessed it is not surprising for a high intermediate hero to be able to blindfold this many cadets. Even so, with the 1,000 miles eyes he has, this does not affect him at all. When one talks about a relic excavation site, people will usually imagine about ruins, but the latest cutting-edge technology used makes it more like an underground bunker. Because there are many people with extraordinary talents in the world, Hajin then looked around to check the details of his opponent, on the first floor of the basement. The number of people stationed here is about 15 cadets. Second floor of the basement, there were 25 cadets. Chai Nayun was on the third floor of the basement. Rachel was also there, and 15 other cadets. Realizing that, Hajin felt that there would be a big fight between the two of them. Hajin then took a step forward. As for himself, he was on the fourth floor of the basement. Looking at his clothes which had now turned black, Hajin realized that he was on the black team. He actually wanted to find out where Shin Jong-hak and Kim Soo-ho were, but it couldn't be helped. Looking at the room he was in, Hajin wondered, was this part of the residence? But he was then surprised when he looked in a direction. Seeing the person in the room next to him, he didn't expect it. Right at that moment, Kim Soo-hyuk then announced, the location of all cadets had been determined. The relic could be guarded by NPCs or moved to various places. The white team must guard the relic, while the black team must steal it. The countdown will start now. After the cadets were placed in each room, the doors separating each room then closed. After that, Kim Soo-hyuk then told them to prepare and start the countdown. After the practical training finally began, Hajin then prepared his gun. The veil covering the cadets' eyes had been removed at this time. While reading back the message sent by the agent to Tomer, Hajin then thought the relic that Tomer was supposed to take was in area B3 on the lowest floor. The lowest floor, that means the 7th floor of the basement. But this became a little complicated. Yuna was in the next room, and she was on the white team, which meant she would be his enemy in this practical training. In order to get to the corridor from there, he would definitely run into her. Without knowing who she would be dealing with, Yuna then said, "I know there are people there, I heard everything." She asked, "Which team are you on?" "I'm the white team." Seeing no answer from him, Yona then believed he must be from the black team. While opening the door that separated the two of them, Yona said that she felt sorry for him for having to experience this when the practice had just started. After the door finally opened, Yona told him to just think he was unlucky, but she was then stunned when she finally saw someone she was going to fight. She didn't expect it to be Hajin. The atmosphere suddenly became silent when they both fell silent. Seeing that, Hajin was confused. Why did she suddenly stop her attack? For some reason, she felt Yona looked a little tense. It was natural because Yona really looked up to him. Her attitude changed to be very alert at this time. Yona anxiously thought that this was very bad. She never thought he would be her first opponent. She then gasped when she saw Hajin suddenly raise his hand. She then nervously told him not to try to do anything strange. Hajin could only be dumbfounded at that. He really didn't know what she meant, even though he just wanted to scratch his body because it was itchy. But Yona certainly didn't know that. She was already very nervous at this time. Ho's weapon was an ordinary trainee gun, but he could fire a shot strong enough to penetrate the enhanced protection energy. She wondered, what should she do? Should she fight him, or, looking at the closed door in the narrow corridor behind her, Yona felt she was doomed. The corridor outside was very narrow, and it was a one-way corridor. No matter how she escaped, she was still within range of his gun. While tightening her grip on her whip, Yona then calmed herself down. She thought that this could be a chance for her. She had only estimated how strong he was based on her observations so far, so this was a chance for her to find out his true strength. Seeing Yona who suddenly put up a fighting position, Hajin then confusedly called out to her, but Yona suddenly used her whip to strike towards his hand. It made his gun slip out of his hand, and as the gun flew upwards, Yona then wrapped her whip around the gun, and took it. The incident felt so fast that it made Hajin seem as if he couldn't react. Yona was then happy because she managed to take the gun from his hand. She didn't think she could really take it. Looking at Hajin who was just standing there stupidly, Yona wondered if he really wasn't that great. Yona then arrogantly said to him, "Without a gun, even you won't be able to do anything." But she was then shocked. The gun she had taken from Hajin suddenly disappeared from her hand. Seeing the gun that returned to Hajin's hand, Yona shockedly asked, "When did you take it back?" Hajin replied, "Just now." Yona could only feel confused hearing that. She didn't even see him move earlier. Did he use magic? Hajin was a little confused about how to explain it. He then told her to just assume so. Yona really couldn't understand it. Hajin didn't explain further. He thought, because exactly. This wasn't magic. The reason behind it was very simple. From the beginning, Hajin had wrapped the ether around his gun just in case in this kind of situation. Their situation was again at a stalemate at the moment. Neither of them started moving again. Yona realized that this situation was very bad for her. The room they were in at the moment was very narrow. She would still be in the range of his shots no matter where she ran. She also wondered, it would definitely hurt if she was shot. Right, if she was disqualified now, she would die first. Seeing Hajin who was about to pull the trigger, Yona could only resignedly close her eyes as if waiting for her fate. After his battle with Yona ended, Hajin then exhaled. Looking at his bruised hand, Hajin thought, his bone must have been broken if Yona's attack had hit him right. Yona was indeed very strong, but, looking at the vast room, he did not expect such a vast lobby to be empty like this. Hajin wondered, had they gone to another area? All Relic War participants are equipped with a life signaling device. The purpose of this device is to display the user's HP in numbers that others can see. This is a device that can indicate whether the cadet can still continue the training or not. So, if he uses his notebook to collect data from the GPS device, then he can check the live GPS data using the linked smartwatch. For example like this, he could now see Tomer's position during the training. She was in the toilet on the 7th floor of the basement at the moment. Judging from the lack of movement from her, Hajin was sure she must be standing there while waiting for the item. Hajin paused for a moment. He then decided to find out the other locations first. Rachel and Nayun were on the 3rd floor of the basement. They were fighting right now. As for the 5th floor of the basement, Kim Soho and Shin Jonghak were both there. They seemed to be heading towards each other's position right now. Hajin was very excited to see that. That's a huge matchup. He wondered if there was any CCTV near them. After searching for a while, Hajin finally found it. He then immediately hacked it to watch the fight between the two best cadets in Cube. Seeing him, Jonghak then said that he knew this day would come. Soho was the same. Hajin now completely forgot about the training and focused on watching the fight between the two of them. After they both took fighting positions, Soho then told him to come forward. He would show the difference in strength between them, and while Hajin was busy watching the fight of the two of them, someone suddenly darted past him at this time. It made him surprised and woke up. Seeing the person who quickly climbed the stairs to the next floor, Hajin thought, that's really a noisy way to go through this area. But it managed to make Hajin refocus on his original goal. He had to go to Tomer now. After he looked at the clock for a while, Hajin then immediately set off. Somewhere on the 3rd floor of the basement, a cadet looked very desperate when faced with the opponent in front of him at the moment. He then immediately said that he gave up. Right at that moment, his eyes were suddenly covered with a black veil just like when this training started. The reason why the cadet could be so desperate to give up was because the opponent he was facing at the moment was Chai Nayun. This was her 3rd kill. She felt this was quite easy. She didn't expect, in just less than 3 months after changing her main weapon to a sword, she turned out to be this good at using it. She felt she was quite talented in using a sword, but her attention was then immediately distracted when someone suddenly called her. It was her friend named Jiun. Jiun was very happy when she saw her and immediately ran to her. She was grateful for being safe. Seeing her, Nayun then asked, "Where have you been?" Jiun said, "While she was hiding, she was suddenly caught by the black team. She could barely escape earlier. she also ran out of arrows. When running away, she really felt sad when remembering that. Nayeon chuckled at that. She was sure she must be tired. She also felt happy to meet her here. Even though a support like Jiyeon was weak in direct combat, she could provide a lot of help in combat using her buff skills. With a beaming face, Jiyeon said, "Even so, I can defeat one person by using the weakening debuff." Hearing that, Nayeon then said, "Then, let's go get points." Jiyeon was surprised for a moment by her invitation. But she then immediately accepted her invitation. She also told her quite important information. Rachel is on this floor. Nayeon was surprised to hear that, but her attention was then immediately distracted when she heard the sound of footsteps from the direction of the stairs in front of her. Jiyeon said that she was also very surprised at that time. She immediately ran away as soon as she saw her, but Nayeon then asked her to be quiet for a while. With a vigilant attitude, Nayeon then looked at the stairs in front of her. Nayeon then put up a fighting stance and asked Jiyeon to stand behind her, although she was confused by it. But Jiyeon obeyed. Shortly after that, the sound of footsteps kept getting closer, until finally the person was in front of them. They were both then surprised to see that person. She turned out to be Yona. She looked very tired with her breath panting at the moment. Seeing that, Nayeon then immediately walked up to her and asked, "Why are you sweating so much? Are you dealing with someone?" While wiping her sweat, Yona replied, "That person." Hearing that, Nayeon then knew that she meant Hajin. Hearing that Yona had just faced Hajin, Jiyeon then asked her, "Did she beat him?" Yona was quite surprised by her question. Jiyeon asked like that was because the distance between the ranks of the two of them was very far. Yona felt hesitant to answer. She then recalled the incident at that time. When Yona was resignedly waiting for her fate, Hajin suddenly tapped her on the shoulder. While walking past her, he said that this was just the beginning of the war, so he told her to relax. Yona was then dumbfounded by that. She then looked back, and saw Hajin, who was now walking further away from her. While acting strong, Yona then replied, "Not yet." She felt embarrassed to say the actual result. She was the one who was almost defeated by him. Hearing that, Nayeon then confusedly asked, "What did he do?" Yona said that she was not sure. While chuckling, Jiyeon wondered, maybe he was looking for Rachel. Nayeon was then confused to hear that. "Why did he do that?" Jiyeon said, "Because he liked Rachel." They were both then stunned. Nayeon was then very surprised when she heard that. She could not believe what she had just heard. With shaking hands, Nayeon then imagined that situation. She stammeringly asked, "What was she talking about?" Jiyeon asked, "Did she not know?" It was a rumor that was widespread in Cube lately. Hearing that, Yona suddenly said that it was a bullshit rumor. They were both then equally surprised to hear that. Yona herself actually just heard the rumor. This mock relic war has a high percentage of their grades, so there is no time for them to waste by thinking about that silly rumor. Yona then asked, more importantly, has she found the location of the relic? Jiyeon answered yes, she got one. She found an NPC on the way here. While Nayeon herself was still deep in thought at the moment, she still couldn't believe what she had just heard. Yona was happy to hear she had gotten the relic. She then invited them to move it to the first floor right now, but Nayeon was just in a daze. She still couldn't wake up from her shock. She then called Jiyeon. Jiyeon confusedly turned to her. Nayeon said, as Yona said, the rumor might not be true. Most likely the rumor started to spread because they were a group. Hearing that, Jiyeon also felt that it made sense, but everyone was talking about the rumor, so she wondered if there was a possibility that the rumor was true. Hearing that, Nayeon immediately said that it was impossible. She was very sure of that. Yona chuckled at her attitude, but her attention was then immediately distracted when she felt something from above them. She then could only stare in horror when she saw various arrows raining towards them. As the arrows came closer and were about to hit Jiyeon, Yona worriedly called out to her. She then immediately moved closer to her and quickly dispelled the arrows using her whip. Jiyeon was then shocked at the sudden turn of events. Luckily Yona was able to react quickly, otherwise she might have been disqualified by now. After they woke up from their shock, they then asked her if she was okay. Yona then calmed them down. She said that something like this wouldn't hurt her. She told them to put it aside. Hearing that, while taking out her sword from its sheath, Nayeon then angrily asked, who did that? She told them to get out. Shortly after that, they then heard many footsteps moving towards them. The perpetrators of the arrow shooting at them turned out to be Rachel and her group. Nayeon was then shocked to see that. She then angrily called her a coward for making such an attack. But Rachel didn't care at all. She then took out her rapier, and calmly told her group to attack them. Hearing that, they then immediately moved to attack them. Seeing that, Yona then immediately told Ji-eun to hide. Ji-eun understood, but even before she could run far enough away from there, an archer from Rachel's group then shot at the road in front of her. They seemed like they wouldn't just let her get away from there. Na-eun then felt worried seeing that, but her worries ended badly for herself, because her opponents immediately took advantage of her distracted moment to attack her. Na-eun then immediately moved back to open the distance. Seeing that, a swordsman from Rachel's group optimistically thought, with the two of them here, even a Chai Na-eun shouldn't be able to win, right? Na-eun was silent for a moment. She looked very annoyed at this time. She then told them to move aside, but her voice sounded so faint that the two of them couldn't catch it clearly. While swinging her sword at them, Na-eun said that she was very busy, so she told them to step aside. Her attack was really strong that it could knock them both out easily. As for Yona herself, she was now clashing with a swordsman. Their fight seemed to be quite fierce, because Yona was seen breathing heavily. After observing her for a moment, the swordsman then knew she was holding them back from approaching Ji-eun. He wondered, did Yona always do sacrificial acts like this, or maybe, a conjecture then appeared in his head. He then immediately told them that he thought Ji-eun was holding the relic. He asked them to find her. The three of them then felt anxious hearing that. Shortly after that, Ji-eun's hiding location was soon discovered by an archer from Rachel's group, and just as the archer was about to threaten her to quickly hand over the relic, he was surprised to see Na-eun quickly moving towards them. But Na-eun was then surprised when she saw a sword slash that slashed the road in front of her. Na-eun immediately turned alert seeing that it was not a slash that she could casually parry. The power of the slash was so strong that it seemed to split the floor in front of her. Na-eun knew the only person with a technique that had this much power was Rachel, and as Rachel moved to attack her, Na-eun immediately moved backwards to avoid her attack. Rachel was quite surprised to see her able to avoid her sudden attack, but her attack certainly would not stop there. She then relentlessly moved to attack Na-eun. Na-eun looked quite overwhelmed in deflecting her attacks. Even her powerful sword that usually won the fight quickly could be beaten back because of her strength. She admitted she was really strong. Na-eun knew that Rachel realized that her sword skills were lacking, so she cornered her. Na-eun could only curse her helplessness at the moment. She was already troubled just by blocking her attacks. She was also feeling quite annoyed at the moment, but she certainly wouldn't feel hopeless just by that. Na-eun then increased the power of her attack, which made Rachel retreat backwards. Not wasting that, Na-eun then coated her sword with her mana. She really didn't want to lose against Rachel. She was determined to win against her this time. After that, Na-eun then slashed her sword towards her. Rachel was surprised to see that the impact of her sword slash could be so strong. She also realized her energy suddenly changed. She also admitted that her mana was really amazing, but she was still inexperienced in using it. Rather than trying to counterattack, Rachel thought it would be better if she dodged to wait for an opportunity. But a very unfortunate incident suddenly happened to her at this time. Her leg suddenly sprained when she was about to move to dodge. The two of them were both surprised to see that, not wasting the opportunity. Na-eun then immediately rushed to move to attack her. When her attack was about to land, Na-eun then asked her, lost where your focus was, and when Na-eun's sword attack finally landed, the impact was so great that it destroyed part of the floor in that room, but fortunately Rachel was able to quickly dodge the attack. She almost met her defeat earlier. Rachel then planned to shorten their distance, but he was once again struck by misfortune. The floor she was currently standing on turned out to be so fragile because of the impact of Na-eun's attack earlier. Rachel then could only be shocked and she saw herself plunging downstairs. Na-eun was just as shocked as she was when she saw that unexpected event. Not only her, Yona, Ji-eun, and all the members of Rachel's group who saw were equally shocked. They then worriedly called out to Rachel, who was now free-falling downstairs. The fight between Na-eun and Yona against Rachel's group came to a halt as they witnessed that a huge hole was created where Rachel fell earlier, but fortunately the distance between each floor was not so high that Rachel could still survive. She really did not expect the floor to suddenly collapse like that. After they finally woke up from their shock, they then shouted that the floor had collapsed. Hearing that, Rachel came to her senses. There was no time for her to think about this. She had to return to her group immediately, but she was then surprised when she heard the sound of footsteps from behind her. It turned out to be Kim Suho. seeing Suho who took out his sword from its sheath and his white uniform, Rachel could only lament her misfortune. Why should it be now? Not giving her time to think further, Suho then immediately moved to attack her. A thunderous sound was then created due to the clash between their attacks. Meanwhile, on the 6th floor of the basement, Hajin was there now, looking at the CCTV installed. Along the way, Hajin thought he should be careful so as not to attract suspicion. While standing right in front of the toilet, Hajin paused for a moment. He then clumsily said, "I think I will look for the relic in the toilet." After saying that, he then went inside. When he got inside, he was then confused and surprised when he saw someone hiding in one of the toilets there. After he opened the toilet door, he then saw a man shivering in fear while holding the relic in his hand. Hajin did not expect that there was really a relic here. Hajin then casually took the relic from the man's hand, while crying in fear. The man then immediately ran from there and asked him to spare his life. After the man ran far enough from him, he then slowly disappeared. Seeing that, Hajin thought, the hologram really looks like the real thing. He also felt it was quite ridiculous. After all, he found the relic by accident. He also felt he should immediately think of a way to get rid of Tomer. While looking down, Hajin thought, Tomer is right down here. She is waiting in the toilet on the 7th floor of the basement. Hajin then rechecked the message that the agent sent to Tomer. There is a management center in area B3 on the 7th floor of the basement. The item is placed there. Pick it up at 11 p.m. because the management center will be completely empty at that time. Hajin pondered for a moment reading that. There were 15 minutes left before the appointment time arrived. He wondered, what should he do? But, he then immediately thought of a plan. While looking towards the vent above him, Hajin believed this vent should be connected to the 7th floor. After thinking of the plan, Hajin then started the action. He then used Stigma's mana, and turned it into smoke magic that could put Tomer to sleep. Right after that, a smoke then appeared from his wrist. Hajin was happy to see that it worked. Now, he just needed to let the smoke pass through the vent. In the toilet on the 7th floor of the basement, Tomer was seen sitting in the toilet while waiting for the appointment time to arrive. But, she then felt disturbed by the sudden arrival of smoke into her room. She then flung her hands to drive the smoke away, but it was useless, because the smoke magic moved based on Hajin's wishes, so it was useless for her to try to fling it away. Hajin then controlled the smoke to enter Tomer's nose, relying on the ability to penetrate objects from 1,000 miles eyes. He then saw Tomer who coughed for a moment and stood up staggeringly. Tomer felt very sleepy at this time, but she realized that she should not fall asleep here, but she seemed unable to resist her sleepiness, and finally fell asleep there. Hajin then felt happy to see that his plan was going perfectly. There were only 7 minutes left until the appointment time arrived. In a place that looked like an office room on the 7th floor, the entrance to the room suddenly opened at this time. It was certainly Hajin's doing. The room was the management center mentioned by the agent in the message he sent to Tomer. Before entering the room, Hajin nervously wondered. There was no one inside. Right after he finally went inside, he then saw a box on one of the desks there. Hajin wondered, is that the box? And when Hajin took and opened the box, he was then stunned when a bright light appeared from inside the box. Inside the box, there was an item called the Weakening All, an all that would weaken the target when it hit the target. This was reinforced with advanced enchantment weakening. Reading that, Hajin amazedly wondered, what kind of all is this? This even has advanced enchantment. Hajin swallowed. Although this item was not a relic, but this was worth at least hundreds of millions, and the thing that made him happy was, this thing was now his. After getting what he was looking for, Hajin then immediately returned to the 6th floor. He had deleted all the CCTV recordings, so all problems were resolved. But he was then surprised when he saw Rachel there. He was confused why she was on the 6th floor, besides, why her appearance was so shabby like that. Hajin then approached her and whisperingly called her. Rachel was very surprised when someone suddenly called her from behind. Seeing her reaction, Hajin immediately said, "It's me." He asked her to calm down. He was also from the black team. He also apologized for surprising her. Rachel immediately felt relieved after knowing it was him. Hajin then asked, "What happened? Why do you look like that?" Rachel was silent for a moment. She then said, she was trying to do an ambush, but unfortunately she failed. Hajin could only be silent to hear that. Rachel continued, then, she met Kim Suho. She desperately ran away, but Nayun and Yona chased her, and when she managed to escape from them, there was a mage who shot magic at her. Hajin could only sigh at her story. She had apparently gone through a lot. Rachel then asked him, how many people had he defeated? Hajin replied, 0. He asked, what about you? Rachel helplessly replied, she only defeated 1. Hajin was silent for a moment looking at Rachel, who sighed with disappointment. If left alone, she will get a low score in the relic war. It is not a difficult matter to catch up with the score. It doesn't matter if he is in the middle rank, but not for Rachel. That's because her goal are set really high. Hajin said that it's not too late now. He then showed her the relic he had found earlier. Rachel was surprised to see that. She asked, did you find this? Hajin did not answer and told her to take the relic to the top floor. She was faster than him. Rachel was then surprised to hear that, and when Rachel was about to refuse that, Hajin immediately interrupted her and told her to just take it. He said that he wanted to help her. Hajin's face looked very serious when saying that. Rachel didn't know what else to say at the moment. Hajin continued, and at the end towards his right, there's an emergency staircase. There won't be that many people on that side, but Rachel still felt hesitant at the moment. Was it okay for her to do this? But her attention was soon distracted when she heard someone angrily calling her from behind. It turned out to be Nayun and her group. Hajin also felt quite anxious seeing that. It seemed like it would be difficult to deal with 6 people with just the 2 of them. Nayun was then surprised when she saw who. She also saw Rachel, who was holding the relic at this time. She then said to her group that Rachel had stolen the relic from someone else. Nayun and her group then angrily rushed towards them. Seeing that, Hajin then immediately told Rachel to leave, but Rachel was hesitating at the moment. Seeing that, Hajin once again told her to leave. He said he would buy as much time as possible. Rachel could only be stunned to hear that. Her heart was beating very fast at the moment. With a blushing face, Rachel then thanked him. An archer from Nayun's group was then surprised when she saw Rachel running away from there. She then said, did you think I would let you go? She then immediately shot an arrow at her. And when the arrow shot was about to hit her, a bullet suddenly blocked the arrow. The archer was then surprised. When she saw the arrow sent back towards her, the bullet shot was certainly Hajin's doing. She could only feel annoyed at that. The archer then told Yona that she would pursue Rachel with Junyoung, but Yona immediately rejected her plan. She told them not to split up. He was a tough opponent. Seeing Hajin, who was now standing alone there, Nayun then asked him, do you intend to fight 6 people alone? Are you crazy? Hearing that, Hajin just answered casually. When looking at the corridor where they were, Hajin was quite grateful. Fortunately, there were many objects that he could use as handles here. He might be able to escape with parkour. Hajin then said to them, we will only know the results when we try. Hajin's goal was not to fight them, but to buy time. Seeing Yona and Nayun, who were just silent, a man with an axe in his hand then asked, why are you so afraid? It's just a boy with a gun. While coating his whole body with magic power, the man then said, if no one came forward, then he would go first. Nayun could only feel surprised when she saw the man come forward so carelessly, as if underestimating the opponent in front of him. Hajin did not panic at all. With a calm attitude, he then shot the man using his gun. It succeeded in making the man afraid to come forward and retreat backwards, but the man was then surprised when he saw a whip and arrows streaking past him. The whip and arrows were of course from Yona and the archer. Right after the man failed to attack Hajin, they both immediately attacked towards him. Seeing the 2 attacks, Hajin then activated bullet time. With his reflexes increased many times over, Hajin then easily dodged that 2 fast attacks. Not only that, with an accuracy that was impossible for ordinary humans to do, Hajin then aimed at the arrow that shot towards him. After the bullet hit right at the tip of the arrow, the resulting repulsive force caused the arrow to turn back and attack the axeman. He was stunned and broke out in a cold sweat at the sudden change. He was then sent flying backwards when the arrow hit him right in the forehead, but fortunately the arrow was not so strong that it could pierce his head. But it did manage to cause a bruise on his forehead. Hajin himself was shocked when he saw the arrow hit the man instead. Not only him, Nayun and her group were too. The environment was suddenly silent as they both watched the man who was now lying helplessly on the floor. Nayun then immediately walked over to him and asked, are you okay? The man was really shocked and didn't understand at the moment. With a face that wants to cry, he then asked them, how could they attack their own team members? But his complaints were useless because a black veil suddenly enveloped his eyes at this time. It showed that he had been disqualified. He could only feel annoyed and frustrated about it. Seeing that, Hajin thought, It seems that his HP is really running out. It's a coincidence, but his attention was then immediately distracted when he heard Yona speak. Yona had guessed that they couldn't underestimate him. With full alertness, Yona said that she didn't expect that he had even calculated the direction of the bounce. Hajin could only be stunned to hear that, because he himself didn't even calculate it. His real intention seemed to just want to fling the arrow. While Hajin was fighting against Nayan's group, Rachel herself was now running fast up the stairs to the top floor. Rachel wanted to believe that this was not true, the rumor that Hajin liked her. When she heard the cadets talking about the rumor, she felt that it couldn't be true. She felt that it was just a rumor, but that was because she wanted to think rationally. Even if she knew the truth, that meant Rachel really couldn't feel calm at the moment. As Rachel continued to climb up, she then reached the floor where her group was. They were then surprised when they saw her. They were happy to see her safe. Seeing the object in her hand, they then asked, "What are you holding?" Rachel took a breath. And when she was about to answer, they were then surprised. They then immediately told the other team members that Rachel had stolen the relic. They were then shocked to hear that. They all then felt amazed and happy. Rachel was silent for a moment hearing that. While looking at the relic in her hand, she thought, "I shouldn't have taken this from him." Rachel was not in a position to allow her to harbor feelings for someone, because, for the good of her country, her parents, and the royal family guild, she decided to sacrifice everything. She had not given up on something she wanted to protect, but Rachel then held the relic tightly. But at this rate, she might end up just having expectations of his emotions. Rachel then called them all over. She said that there was someone they should help on the 6th floor of the basement. Rachel seemed to decide to help Hajin at this time. But, when they arrived at the 6th floor, they then saw a scene that surprised them. Seeing several cadets lying there helplessly with their eyes covered with a black veil, they wondered, "What is this? What happened? Is there help even needed here?" Rachel was really surprised to see that Hajin, who she thought would be in trouble because he was attacked by 6 people, apparently managed to defeat several of them. The swordsman then asked her, who needed their help. Rachel was confused about how to answer his question. She then said, she thought their help was no longer needed. This was a surprise to her. She knew Hajin was strong, but she didn't think he could fight 6 people at once. But their attention was then immediately distracted when they heard the sound of footsteps from behind them. The swordsman then immediately greeted the person. Rachel then happily looked back. She thought it was Hajin. She asked, "Where have you been?" But the person turned out not to be Hajin as she thought, but Shin Jonghak. With a grin on his face, Jonghak then walked up to them.